Okay, this video is to help demonstrate how to work the transition between pattern 1 and pattern 2 on the Josephine scarf and shawl pattern from Expression Fiber Arts. So I'm going to try to do all this in one take, and forgive any ums and ers and such. I'm trying really hard to keep the knitting in the center of the screen, but I have to look back and forth between what I'm doing and the screen to make sure that's happening. So yeah, filler words, sorry about that. Okay, so when you're done working row 3 on the light side with the light color, it's over here, your setup is going to be back over to the dark side. And so I have two suggestions for you when you're, or two possibilities for what you can do when you're working the transition to row 30, the dark side with the dark color, which is the beginning of pattern 2. The first suggestion is if you are reading your stitches, that is, you're seeing a knit stitch and you're brioche knitting that, or you're seeing a purl stitch and you're brioche purling that, you need to not do that. You need to either just follow the pattern exactly as it's written and ignore the way your stitches are oriented, or the way they appear when you get to them, or you need to tell yourself, just for this row, which is row 30, both the dark color and light color when you're working row 30, that you are working the opposite of the way the stitches present when you get to them. So I'm going to go ahead and work with the dark color, row 30, dark side, dark color. So the first thing you're going to notice is this stitch that you would normally, the way it's presenting, it looks like you need to knit it through the back loop. We're going to go ahead and bring the yarn to the front and purl that. Okay, and then you're going to work your slip 1, yarn over, and this is going to be a brioche purl. Now again, it looks like you're supposed to knit it, but you're going to do the brioche purl instead. Between you're going to get that yarn over and the stitch brioche purl. Again, slip 1, yarn over, oops, brioche purl, and you're going to work that all the way to the end. Slip 1, yarn over, brioche purl, slip 1, yarn over, brioche purl, slip 1, yarn over, brioche purl, slip 1, yarn over, and then you're going to purl that last stitch. Okay, now we're going to slide our stitches back to the beginning, and I think this is probably what's been confusing, because your light colored yarn is hanging here in front, and the instruction says to slip 1 with yarn in back, and obviously the yarn is not in the back, as it has been throughout pattern 1. So what I want you to do, sorry, let me get everything oriented again here, that slip 1 with yarn in back, that's row 30 dark side light color, I want you to consider that the instruction for every row after this that you work of pattern 2. So for the first time you work this, that you're transitioning between pattern 1 and pattern 2, go ahead and slip that first stitch with that yarn where it is. Then you're going to bring the yarn between the needles. Whoops, stay on there. So you're going to bring the yarn up between the needles so it's in back. Okay, so it's going to make a little loop right there. That's okay. All right, what you don't want to do is bring it around the side. You don't want to bring it around before you slip that stitch. You don't want to bring it around here so it's in the back. Okay, and you don't want to bring it over the top either. It needs to be where it is for the time being. Slip that stitch, bring it between the two needles, okay, and then you're going to work the row as follows. You're going to brioche knit that first stitch, now that your yarn is in back, and then you're just going to continue as you would work a brioche knit row. So yarn to the front, slip 1, yarn over, brioche knit, yarn front, slip 1, brioche knit, yarn front, slip 1, yarn over, brioche knit, yarn front, slip 1, brioche knit, slip 1, yarn over. And let me show you this last one. As you can see, you're brioche knitting what looks like into a purl stitch. That looks like a purl bump right there. But yeah, so you're working this row the opposite as you have been working. And then you're gonna let the yarn fall to the back and slip that last stitch. Okay, so now that you've worked this first row, let me make sure my yarns are not tangled up now. Okay, now that you've worked this first row, the stitches should be oriented in a way that you're used to working them. That is, as they're presented, you should be able to work them. So let's see. So first thing we're going to do is with the dark color, we're going to knit one through the back loop, which now our stitch, you can see, is set up to do that. It looks like it's supposed to be knit through the back loop. So go ahead and do that. Okay. And then we're going to bring our yarn front, slip one, yarn over, and then it's brioche knit. And you can see this now looks, the stitch below is a knit stitch, so it looks like we're working the stitch the way it's presenting. So brioche knit, yarn front, slip one, yarn over, brioche knit, front, slip one, yarn over, brioche knit, yarn front, oh, come back, slip one, yarn over, brioche knit, slip one, yarn over, brioche knit, yarn front, slip one, and then we're going to knit that last stitch. Okay, and then when I move my project back to the beginning of the needles so I can do the light color on this row, again, you'll see that everything is, all the stitches are presenting the way they're supposed to be worked as they were before. So it's really just that row 30 that you got to get through both sides to work correctly. Row 31, light side, light color. I'm going to slip the first stitch, and I have my yarn in front as it's supposed to be, and it's tangled around my needle. Hang on. Come here. Let's try that again. Okay. Slip one, and then I'm going to immediately work a brioche purl in, let's see, you can kind of see the purl bump right here. So brioche purl, and then I'm going to do my slip one, yarn over, and you can see the brioche purl goes into what looks like a purl bump a lot easier on this stitch. So brioche purl, and we're just going to continue working that all the way across. Slip up, go in there, go in, slip, yarn over, brioche purl, slip one, yarn over, brioche purl, all the way to the end. Finish that, one more brioche purl, and that's basically the first two rows of pattern number 2. Slip that last stitch. Okay, so let me show you on another swatch. So as you can see, this is a different color, but as you work several rows of pattern 2, this is my dark side. So before, pattern 1 would look like this. And you can see now with pattern 2, especially if I cover that transition a little bit, you can see that the light color is starting to be the primary color on this side. And then on the light colored side, again, this is my pattern 1 down here, and then up here is where my pattern 2 is. And you can see the dark color is starting to show up as the primary between those. So with this swatch, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the transition back to pattern 1, since I've worked several rows of pattern 2, just to show you. I'm sorry, this dark color is really dark, so it's hard to see the needle, like the stitches exactly as they're falling on the needle. But I'm going to go ahead and go back and work 2 rows, row 2, dark side, dark color of pattern 1. So as you can see, first stitch is saying knit 1 through the back loop, and obviously this stitch is oriented to be a purl 1. So I've got to pull my yarn behind my needle, and then I'm going to knit that through the back loop. All right, so it's going to change that right there. And then I'm going to do yarn front, slip 1, yarn over, and even though this looks like a purl stitch, I'm going to do a brioche knit. Okay, and I'm sorry, this swatch is a little bigger, so it's going to take me a little bit longer to get to the end of it. So just bear with me here while I complete it really fast. Yarn front, slip 1, yarn over, Yarn front, slip one, yarn over, brioche knit, all the way, whoops, to the end of my swatch. So again, like I said, it's just easier if for the row that you're doing the transition, if you have been reading your stitches, to instead just follow the pattern exactly as it's written. And it's really just about getting that yarn at the beginning where it needs to be to make that first stitch. So let me show you knit that last stitch when we get back to the beginning with the light color. Again, the light color is not going to be in the right place to begin that row because it's saying for the light color that I want to slip one with my yarn in front, and right now obviously my yarn is in the back. Okay, so again, I'm going to slip that first stitch and I'm going to bring the yarn up and between my needle tips to make that first brioche purl. And it's just getting the yarn in the right position. Okay, you don't want to bring it around the side. Again, you don't want to bring it around the side. You don't want to bring it over the top before you begin. You want to bring it between those two needles after you slip that first stitch. Okay, and then you're just going to continue that row, making your brioche purl into what looks like a knit stitch. You can see you've got your knit stitch right here, but no, we're making brioche purls on this row only, and then all the stitches will be oriented for you to work correctly for the rest of that pattern. It's just that first row of the pattern that it's not going to make sense. Okay, so just continue following the way the pattern is written instead of reading your stitches for just the transition row, just the two. So when you transition to pattern 2, when you're doing row 30, both the dark side and the light, or the dark color and the light color, you're following the pattern as opposed to reading your stitches. Or if you're still wanting to read your stitches, you're reading them. You're working the opposite of where the stitch is presenting. So if it's presenting as a knit, it's going to be a brioche purl. If it's presenting as a purl, it's going to be a brioche knit. I hope that helps. Please let me know if there's anything I can make more clear, and hopefully the yarn stayed centered in the project stayed centered in the screen, so that you could see what I was doing and I didn't go off the screen too many times. Hope that helps.